All right, good morning. Today what we're going to be covering are the four basic watercolor techniques. So I'm just using some regular praying semi-moist watercolors, and this is a number 8 synthetic round brush. To achieve these techniques, we just need to focus on the very basic tenets of watercolor. So when I activate a color, and in this case I'm just going to choose blue, it really only takes about 3 drops of water to get that going. Once you put those 3 drops in there, give it about 20 seconds so that the gum arabic has a chance to start dissolving. If it's been a while since you've used the paints, or if they're new, you may need to gently massage the top of it, although you don't need to dig off in the paint. That's really unnecessary. All right, a flat wash is quite simply a smooth, even area of color. When I paint, I'm going to paint left to right, top to bottom, in smooth overlapping strokes for 2 reasons. One, this is the way that we're most used to writing, so we're familiar with this left to right motion. 2, if we were painting on an easel or an elevated or inclined surface, gravity would tend to pull the paint down. So logically, it's much easier and effective to brush the paint down than it is to try to push it uphill. So that's a flat wash. Just a smooth, even area, and it's the most basic of the techniques. Now, glazing is a 2-step process. It's one transparent flat wash over another. So again, we're relying on kind of the Goldilocks principle. We don't want the paint too dark. We don't want the paint too light. We just want it just right. So as you're glazing, or as you're putting this first flat wash down, make sure that it's a transparent flat wash. If the paint is really thick, you need to adjust the amount of water. If it's too light, then obviously it needs more paint. Now we're going to come back to this once the glaze area is dry, and we'll add an additional flat wash over top of it. But for now, we're just going to let that dry and come back to it. Now, wet into wet technique is used when we need to cover a large area. It's also how we shade in watercolor. So the first thing I'm going to do, and this is not going to look like much, is I'm going to wet the paper in the same manner that I'm going to brush with just clean water. So the paper operates like a sponge. If we saturate it or pre-wet it, this gives us more time to work the paint, and by increasing the drying time, it increases the working time. Then I'm going to load my brush, and this time I'm going to dot along the top of that area that I wet. And you can see the paint wants to flow from the top to the bottom. And then very gently, I'm going to brush it down. As I brush down, if I don't reload the brush, I'm going to run out of paint. So it's naturally going to be darker at the top with a light finish at the bottom. All right, I'm then going to thoroughly dry my brush. So to do this properly, I want to take the brush and I want to drag it across my paper towel in a twisting motion. This serves 2 purposes. One, the dry paper towel will pull the moisture from the brush, and the twisting will realign the bristles back into a point. Now, as the name implies, dry brush, we're removing water, which is the vehicle of watercolor. So the paint is going to be very thick and it's not going to want to move. It's also going to be very opaque. Dry brush is really only used for small detail areas. So think about a portrait and you're putting in the eyelashes, or perhaps you're painting in the black pupil of the eye. So we're just going to paint a very small area with dry brush, and you're going to notice a few things when you do this. One, it's not going to go very far, and the brush is going to drag as you try to paint, because really the only moisture that you have to work with are those 3 initial drops that we used when we activated the paint. So it's going to be very thick, and I always equate it to the consistency of nail polish or Elmer's glue. All right, so at this point we're going to return to our glaze area, and it's still a little bit more damp than I would have hoped. So I'm going to dry this with my brush just a little bit to help it along. All right. So a glaze, again, is one transparent flat wash over another. So in this case, I'm going to choose to use violet over top my blue. And again, we need to give the violet a chance to activate. These sections that I'm painting here, I just measured out some 3" by 3" squares. So when you turn your work in, what I'm looking for is please have them labeled. Okay, please execute each technique in order. So flat wash, glaze, wet and wet, and dry brush. And then submit it in Canvas using a JPEG file. All right, so at this point I'm going to glaze a violet flat wash over top of the blue. Again, I'm going to paint from left to right, top to bottom, in overlapping strokes. And again, my objective is for it to be smooth and even, all the same relative value. So that's flat wash, glaze, wet into wet, and dry brush. Give it a try. If you have questions, email me through Canvas. Good luck to you, and be on the lookout for the next lesson.